The Invisible War, Soviet Pilots versus America in the Korean Skies. Prologue. The year is 1950. World War II ended just 5 years ago. The world is already divided. The Cold War is freezing over, and on the Korean peninsula, a hot war erupts. American pilots flying the latest jet fighters rule the skies. They are confident. They are experienced. They believe no one can challenge them. They are wrong. 30,000 Soviet pilots, technicians and advisors are already there. They wear Chinese uniforms. They speak Korean over the radio. They fly MiG-15s with North Korean markings. If they are shot down and captured, Moscow will deny they ever existed. This is the story of the first jet war in history. The story of Soviet aces who shot down American planes by the dozens. The story of pilots who knew that if they fell into enemy hands, their country would not save them. The story of a secret air war that claimed hundreds of lives and changed aviation warfare forever. For 40 years, this war remained classified. The pilots who fought in it returned home in silence. No parades, no medals, no recognition. Their enemies knew their skill. Their own country pretended they never existed. This is their story. Part 1. The Forgotten Front. When the Korean War began on June 25, 1950, the world held its breath. Two ideologies clashed on a tiny peninsula. America rushed to defend South Korea. China prepared to support the North, and the Soviet Union watched from the shadows. Stalin made a decision. The USSR would not send ground troops. That would risk open war with America. But the skies were different. If Soviet pilots flew undercover, if their planes carried foreign markings, if they never spoke Russian on the radio, maybe, just maybe, they could fight without starting World War III. The 64th Fighter Aviation Corps was formed. Its mission: protect the skies over North Korea and China from American bombers. Its pilots, the best of the best, veterans of World War II, men who had already beaten the Luftwaffe. They were given new planes, the MiG-15, a revolutionary jet fighter that could outclimb and outgun almost anything America had. In November 1950, the first MiGs crossed the Yalu River into North Korea. The Americans didn't know what hit them. Part 2. The MiG Alley. American pilots called it MiG Alley, a strip of sky along the Yalu River, the border between China and Korea. It was the most dangerous airspace in the world. Every day, formations of American B-29 superfortresses crossed into North Korea to bomb bridges, factories, and troop concentrations. They flew at 20,000 feet, confident in their armor and their guns. They had ruled the skies over Japan and Germany. They expected the same here. They were wrong. The MiG-15 was a revolution. Designed with help from captured German engineers and British engine technology, it could climb faster, turn tighter, and fly higher than the American F-80 Shooting Star and even the new F-86 Sabre. Its cannons, 23mm and 37mm, packed a devastating punch. One hit could tear a bomber apart. When the MiGs appeared, the B-29s were helpless. The Soviet pilots dove out of the sun, fired, and climbed away before the American escorts could react. Bombers exploded in mid-air. Crews burned. The Americans had never experienced anything like it. General Hoyt Vandenberg, Chief of Staff of the US Air Force, was furious. "We always knew the Russians had the capability," he said, "but we didn't think they'd use it." Part 3. The First Aces. Nikolai Sutyagin was 27 years old. He had fought in World War II, shot down German planes, earned his wings in blood. Now he was in Korea, flying a MiG-15 with North Korean stars on its wings. He didn't speak on the radio. He didn't carry any identification. If he went down, he was nothing. a ghost. In his first months over Korea, Sutyagin destroyed one American plane after another. He developed tactics that became legend, diving out of the sun, firing from close range, using the MiG's superior climb to escape before the sabres could react. By the time his tour ended, Sutyagin had shot down 22 American aircraft. 22. That made him the highest-scoring jet ace in history. Not just Soviet history, world history. No pilot in any air force has ever surpassed that number in jet-to-jet combat. Yevgeny Pepelyev was close behind. 20 American planes. He flew 108 combat missions, engaged the enemy 38 times, and never lost a wingman. His skill was legendary. Once, he shot down an F-86 Sabre with such precision that the American pilot survived and was captured. Pepelyev later met him. They became friends. These men were heroes, but their country didn't know. Their families didn't know. When they returned home, they were told to keep silent. The medals they earned were handed over in secret. No newspapers wrote about them. No parades welcomed them. Part 4. The Sabre and the MiG. The F-86 Sabre was America's answer to the MiG. It arrived in Korea in December 1950, and suddenly the odds changed. The Sabre had its own advantages. It was more stable in high-speed dives. Its radar gunsight was more accurate. Its pilots were well-trained and confident. What followed was the first jet versus jet air combat in history. Over the next 3 years, MiGs and Sabres clashed thousands of times. The sky over MiG Alley became a laboratory for aerial warfare. The Americans claimed an incredible kill ratio, 10 Sabres for every MiG. Soviet records tell a different story. According to their archives, the 64th Fighter Corps destroyed around 1,100 American aircraft, losing only 335 of their own. The truth lies somewhere in between, but one thing is certain. The Soviet pilots more than held their own. Captain Nikolai Sutyagin shot down 9 American planes. Major Dmitry Samolov got 10. Lieutenant Lev Shchukin scored 15. Each victory was hard won, each mission a life or death gamble. Part 5. The Hidden Warriors. The Soviet pilots lived a strange double life. They wore Chinese uniforms with North Korean rank insignia. Their planes carried North Korean markings. They were forbidden to speak Russian over the radio. If they had to communicate, they used Korean phrases they'd memorized phonetically. If a pilot was shot down and captured, the consequences were dire. The Americans would have proof that the Soviet Union was directly participating in the war. That could escalate into global conflict. So every pilot carried a pistol with a single bullet. Not for the enemy, for themselves. Several pilots did fall into American hands. They were interrogated, tortured sometimes, but held to their cover stories. Most were eventually repatriated through secret channels. Their names never appeared in any newspaper. Major Stepan Naumenko became the first Soviet ace of the Korean War on December 24, 1950. He shot down an American F-86 in a daring dogfight, then returned to base and filed his report. No one outside his unit ever knew. Part 6. The Night Witches. Not all the fighting happened in daylight. At night, a different kind of war raged. American B-29s often bombed under cover of darkness, thinking they were safe. They weren't. The Soviet 351st Fighter Regiment specialized in night interceptions. Flying modified MiG-15s, they hunted the bombers in the dark. Major Anatoly Karelin was the master of night combat. On June 10, 1952, he intercepted a formation of B-29s over North Korea. In a single mission, he shot down 3 of the giant bombers. The Americans were stunned. How could a single pilot find and destroy 3 planes in pitch darkness? Karelin's secret was training and patience. He stalked the bombers for hours, using ground radar to guide him close, then relying on his eyes and instincts for the final attack. He finished the war with 6 night kills, all B-29s, each with a crew of 11 men. For his skill, Karelin was awarded the Gold Star of Hero of the Soviet Union. But the ceremony was private, no cameras, no reporters, just generals and silent handshakes. Part 7. The Friendly Fire Tragedy. The war had its tragedies too. On April 12, 1952, a group of Soviet MiGs engaged a large American formation near the Yalu. The fighting was intense, dozens of planes twisting and turning at transonic speeds. In the chaos, a young Soviet pilot named Viktor Muravyov spotted 2 MiGs that he thought were enemy Sabres. They were flying in formation, slightly apart from the rest. He maneuvered behind them and opened fire. Both planes exploded. Only then did Muravyov realize his mistake. He had shot down 2 Chinese MiG-15s, flown by Chinese pilots training with the Soviets. The pilots died instantly. Muravyov returned to base in shock. He was grounded, investigated, but eventually cleared. The court ruled that the confusion of battle, the similar silhouettes, the stress of combat, all contributed to the error. But Muravyov never forgave himself. He finished his tour, returned home, and rarely spoke of Korea again. Part 8. The Toll of Secrecy. When the armistice was signed on July 27, 1953, the shooting stopped. But for the Soviet pilots, the silence continued. They returned home on transport planes, still in Chinese uniforms, still carrying fake documents. They were told to forget everything. No one could know they had fought in Korea. No one could know they had shot down American planes. Many never received their medals until decades later. Some died before the secret was lifted. Their families knew only that they had served somewhere in the East. The full story remained classified until the 1990s. The toll was heavy. Official Soviet records show 335 pilots and crew killed in Korea. But the real number may be higher. Some pilots who were shot down and captured simply disappeared. Their names erased from records. Their families told they died in accidents. Part 9. The Enemy's Respect. The American pilots who fought against them had no doubt who they were facing. They heard the MiG pilots speak Russian over the radio. They saw the quality of their tactics. They knew. Captain Richard S. Becker, an F-86 pilot with the 4th Fighter Wing, later wrote, "We knew we were fighting Russians. They were good, damn good. The best we'd ever faced. Better than the Germans, better than the Japanese. They pushed us to our limits." The Soviet pilots earned that respect through skill and courage. They fought against superior numbers, often alone, always under the threat of capture and denial. They invented tactics on the fly, adapted to new challenges, and proved that Soviet aviation could match and beat the best America had. Part 10. The Legacy of the Invisible War. 50 years later, the secrets finally came out. In the 1990s, Russian archives opened. Veterans began to speak. Books were written. Documentaries made. The world learned the truth. The Soviet Union had fought in Korea from the first day to the last. 56 Soviet pilots became aces during the war. The top scorer, Nikolai Sutyagin, remains the most successful jet fighter pilot in history. The tactics they developed shaped air combat for decades. The lessons learned over MiG Alley influenced fighter design, pilot training, and military doctrine on both sides of the Cold War. In 1998, the surviving veterans were finally recognized. Medals were belatedly awarded. Memorials were erected. The ghosts of MiG Alley were given names and faces. Major General Georgy Lobov, who commanded the 64th Fighter Corps, wrote in his memoirs. "We did our duty, we fought for our country, even if our country couldn't admit it. We lost friends, comrades, brothers, but we never lost a battle, and we never will." The invisible war is visible now. The pilots are remembered, the sacrifices honored, and the secret sky where MiGs and Sabres dueled for 3 years has finally been opened to history. Epilogue. Today, at the Central Armed Forces Museum in Moscow, a small display case holds a faded Chinese uniform, a pair of North Korean wings, and a photograph of a young pilot smiling at the camera. The caption reads, "Participant in the Korean War 1950 to 1953. Name classified until 1995. Behind the glass, the pilot's real name is finally visible. Nikolai Sutyagin, hero of the Soviet Union, the greatest jet ace of all time. The invisible war is over. The pilots have come home, and history at last remembers.